Welcome to the JDC West 2022 International Business Case Presentation. Thank you to our judges, Bridget Lazarco, Ted Morehouse, Amanda Bjarnason, Brian Gilchrist, and Roderick McIntosh. Competitors, you will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask the presenters questions. Competitors, you will see Zoom chat notifications at various intervals to indicate the time remaining. Any speaker who continues to speak after the maximum time limit will be stopped. No questions or comments will be permitted from the audience. All judges are asked to have their microphones muted during the presentation. The audience is banned from any material or naming convention that bears the name or symbol of a competing university. We ask that the audience leave the Zoom call immediately following the presentation. Judges, please stay on this call until I advise you to move to the next one. Competitors, you may begin your presentation now.
The pessimist complains about the wind, and the optimist expects things to change. However, it's the realist who adjusts the sails. Without a doubt, COVID-19 has changed life completely, reshaping the way firms operate all around the world. But companies like Architectonics that have the drive and passion to move across borders despite these changes need something to adjust the sails to expand internationally. Successful international expansion, despite the changes from the pandemic, will always be contingent on leveraging the human advantage. As a result, we come to you today to show you how you can capture the human advantage by empowering communities and operating ethically to succeed internationally. Hi, my name is Megan, and today I'm joined by my colleagues Marcus and Shane on behalf of Triple Creek Consulting to present to you our strategy, Designing a New Way Forward. This strategy is composed of 3 pillars: how to respond, where to play, and how to enter.
Our vision is to successfully pivot Architectonics operations, expanding internationally into one high-growth market in 2022. To do so, we have identified 3 key questions that must be answered. The first being, how can Architectonics best mitigate the challenges faced in the Philippines bid? The second is, which alternative countries offer the most attractive growth prospects? And lastly, which entry method will shield Architectonics from uncertainty and enable long-term growth? Our answers to this include a carefully navigated response to the Manila municipal government, expanding into the US, and entering through acquisition. The impacts of the Designing a New Way Forward strategy include, first, achieving a better alignment of company processes with core values. Second, achieving healthy revenue diversification by 2026, split 84% in Canada and 16% in the US. And lastly, achieving a conservatively estimated NPV of approximately 4.9 million based on our 2025 to 2026 forecast period. Our presentation is structured, and then we'll walk through each key question in corresponding recommendation at a time, and then conclude with implementation and impact analysis. With that, I'll pass it off to Marcus to begin with our first pillar of how to respond.
Thank you, Shane. Moving into the first pillar of our strategy of how to respond and navigate through the upcoming bid in the Philippines, Architectonics faces 3 key issues that will significantly affect the probability of a successful bid. First, your founder, Marissa Lalonde's lack of vaccination status will severely restrict her ability to enter Manila, which has been on increased alert levels as of this month. Further, the government of Alberta currently requires 8 weeks in between doses, extending beyond the site visit, meaning that Marissa will not be able to be vaccinated in time. As well, while it is possible for unvaccinated travelers to enter the country, the lack of access to COVID-19 tests will unethically put local residents at risk, while the government's recent shift to strict public health protocols adds an increased layer of complexity. Therefore, to potentially enter the Philippines market, what additional local factors will affect your expansion strategy? The Philippines is a country that emphasizes strong relationship orientation in the workplace. They value effective trust, which can only be established through face-to-face communication, while their strong emphasis on vertical hierarchy means that on-site visits must be attended by business leaders to be taken seriously. Finally, they place minimal emphasis on consensual decision-making. That is to say, virtual site visits will not be an option, as Architectonics will lose its bid to key competitors. Similarly, without the founder of Architectonics in attendance, the client will likely secure the deal with your competitors. Finally, the government will not be receptive to a collaborative decision-making that aligns with your goals. When viewing the current state of the Philippines amid COVID-19, global vaccine and testing inequities create considerable ethical concerns that will harm Architectonic's public perception upon entry. For example, currently less than half of the population is vaccinated, while the government has only secured vaccinations for 36% of the population, more than 300% less than Canada. Thus, this lack of access and increasing case counts in Manila creates significant ethical concerns for unvaccinated Canadian employees entering the country. For example, in 2021, 79% of the Filipino public believed that the national spread of COVID-19 was attributed to people failing to follow health protocols, meaning Architectonic's proposed entry will generate significant criticism locally. Accordingly, Architectonics has fostered 4 key internal company values since its inception in 2011, drawing on diversity, team culture, inclusivity, and continuous improvement to empower its employees to truly capture the human advantage. However, the current lack of methods to ensure employee comfort with travel before bid negotiations take place, and a lack of company policies to support employees who may fall ill fails to ethically cater to the needs of employees, which must be a priority in preparing for expansion. When viewing the economic viability of the market, in 2020, Manila experienced the highest year-over-year increase in construction costs among cities in the APAC region, which is directly correlated with a decrease in productivity for architectural firms. Further, while the market is experiencing incremental growth from 2018 to 2024, significant growth opportunities are only projected to begin in 2025, far beyond Architectonic's timeline for expansion goals. Thus, in order to become profitable right now on an international scale, Architectonics must defer the Philippines expansion and focus on more profitable opportunities. Now, moving into our recommendation, we propose taking a stakeholder-based approach to preparing for expansion. First, you must respond to the impending bid by communicating to the Manila government of the withdrawal. This will take place through the hiring of a temporary communications specialist from a local agency, ensuring that the clients do not feel disrespected through virtual communications. The specialist will emphasize the mutual concerns and impact on the local community with limited access to healthcare. Finally, with COVID-19 drastically altering the bidding process for architecture projects, we recommend entering into a long-term agreement with a conditions precedent clause, indicating that you would look to enter into a bid once local vaccination rates improve to above 90%, which is projected in 2025. Once this is complete, Architectonics must capitalize on the opportunity created by the backlog of projects in Western Canada, which is driven by growth in the province of British Columbia. When viewing the expected value of the 2 immediate options, pursuing this option provides more than 3 times the expected value of the Philippines project, which is driven by the profitability and the probability of securing a bid. To implement a foundation that positions employees for an international expansion plan, the introduction of an anonymous wellness portal can allow for communicating with unvaccinated employees and encouraging them to book an appointment without singling anyone out, while ensuring there are policies in place to support employees who will be able to declare site visit preferences, including remote options. Unvaccinated employees will be limited to virtual site visits in 2022, while Architectonics can begin preparing for expansion into foreign markets with high access to healthcare, protecting employees and the local community. Through the revamped business development process that is shown on the right, Architectonics will be able to create a seamless bidding and site visit process that caters to the needs of employees.
Moving into the second pillar of our Design a New Way Forward strategy, where to play, we can now look towards fulfilling the needs to expand internationally by identifying markets that are capable of balancing both risk and growth potential. We filtered countries based on key criteria of existing trade relations with having existing bilateral FDI policies, a market size worth over 30 billion Canadian dollars, an effective COVID-19 recovery plan evaluated by a 60% vaccination rate, and a demand growth for Architectonics offerings shown by at least a 5% CAGR. These 5 countries present the best opportunity for entry. However, the US is the most optimal market to enter based on their cultural alignment with Canada, as well as the ease of doing business. And as you can see on the left, American and Canadian working cultures are highly aligned in all cultural dimensions, allowing for greater ease of collaboration across borders and decreased risks of challenges stemming from communication, allowing for a greater ease of market entry for architectonics. And further evaluating the US market, it's crucial to assess value alignment as well. In doing so, we have identified architectonics' 4 key values for projects, which are inclusivity, green space, community impact, and local expression. Based on a robust analysis of the US market and workplace, entry into the US will enable architectonics to share your values across borders. And although the US signifies opportunity with cultural and value alignment, we must also assess the overall growth potential in this market. We evaluated the US on the basis of Architectural Billing Index, which is the leading economic indicator for non-residential construction activity. A score of 50 or more is indicative of a strong growth opportunity. And as you can see on the left, the South and Midwest pose significant opportunities for architectonics because of significant backlog architecture projects. And now that we understand that the Southern and Midwestern United States yield substantial potential, we can now compare the Architectural Billings Index geographically to the map of COVID-19 recovery trends by state in order to evaluate which states to target specifically. Here we can see an overlap with the states Texas, Florida, and Illinois, indicating the strength of those regions. And with these states in mind, we can base our entry decision off of forecasted industry growth. Based on the value of new construction starts by state, which are directly tied to demand for architecture services, Texas acts as the best location to enter for your international expansion projects, as it outperforms the projected US average growth rate and construction start value of other states. And within Texas, we've also determined that you must target major cities such as Irving, Dallas, and Houston upon entry into the United States based on the parameters of growth potential and project opportunities. Within these cities, it's imperative to create a scalable strategy to grow your operations within Texas. The way to do this is by identifying and capitalizing on business development opportunities and projects in population dense cities due to existing backlogs on projects, establishing strong relationships with clients during the bidding and proposal process, either from Canada or in Texas through B2B sales strategies, such as warm calling and referrals through pre-established clients.
In deciding how to enter the US, we first need to look at architectonics core competencies. We note some defining characteristics are that architectonics has a well-defined track record in Canada, but lacks experience and recognition internationally. As well, the company does not maintain significant existing clients outside Canada. This analysis points to the need to pursue strategies that can establish a client base and have a minimal risk of failure. When comparing alternatives available to architectonics, it is clear that M&A appears to best align with architectonics' current situation for several reasons. Firstly, M&A offers the benefits and timeliness and control, while also allowing for the acquisition of new talent, otherwise known as the human advantage. However, M&A also stands out because architectonics can acquire an existing customer base and grow faster than previously imagined by pursuing bidding contracts from Canada. Other alternatives, such as greenfielding, struggle to offer this ability to gain clients quickly, and therefore switching countries means delaying far into 2023. Moving on, we see that when it comes to the ability to quickly and efficiently establish a presence, M&A offers a low-risk, high-reward strategy, while other options are either too risky to grow or offer too low of a return. Therefore, the only strategy that will enable architectonics to still meet its 2022 international expansion goal is M&A, for which mid-market transactions can generally be completed within 4 to 6 months. Note that greenfielding and partnering also have similar timeframes to establish, but sales uptake is much harder and lengthier given the need to bid on projects once approved to operate in the US, which significantly increases the risk as discussed previously. Supporting this argument is the fact that M&A is a commonplace entry strategy in the US, and the market environment is likely to remain supportive of M&A in 2022. In particular, we see the need to act urgently given the threat of rate hikes proposed by central banks starting early this year. For the first part of the how to enter pillar, we recommend targeting an existing architectural company focused on green space, local expression, and restoring buildings. We have also screened Texas companies on multiple criteria and have come up with the following shortlist of 3 companies: Of these, JHP architecture appears well aligned given its focus on commercial and residential projects such as multifamily buildings. We estimate a purchase price of around $8 million, depending on the multiple applied, and we are happy to walk through in depth our valuation methodology, advisor selection, or due diligence process in Q&A. We note that when purchasing a foreign company, it is important to hedge the risk of exchange rate fluctuations. To do so, we know we can use the Export Development Canada, or EDC for short, Foreign Exchange Rate Facility Guarantee, which can enable Architectonics to reduce this risk. This works by having EDC fund the initial payments at a locked-in exchange rate, which can then be repaid at a later date. For long-term strategic alignment, an acquisition is both attractive for JHP and for Architectonics. For JHP, the ability to have more capital to grow and the ability to bridge gaps will be highly valued. For Architectonics, gaining access in an established client base in the largest construction market by value in Texas with the ability to scale cannot be understated. As well, the acquisition of highly talented individuals will only further Architectonics' human advantage. Ensuring a successful acquisition requires an effective change management plan. We've outlined 3 steps to do so. The first is preparing for change by conducting meetings to articulate values and goals between the firms, as well as identifying and establishing change champions to campaign and promote the benefits of the acquisition and answer burning questions. Second, we plan to manage change by appointing staff members who are vaccinated and are able to travel to help train and onboard JHP employees as necessary. Among other initiatives, includes the creation of tracking calendars. Lastly, we see the ability to sustain change through bi-weekly check-ins and company-sponsored celebrations of success to reward our new employees. The final piece of our How to Enter pillar involves the establishing strict COVID-19 in-office protocols to ensure limited possibility of an outbreak, as well as supporting workers further through workplace rotations and providing the opportunity to work in a hybrid model depending on the type of work. Lastly, we've also built in a contingency planning through the use of force majeure clauses where necessary with customers to negate the impacts if hit by a COVID-19 outbreak, shutting down the office.
Moving into our implementation, what can your company do starting today? First, you will plan for the meeting with the Manila government and preparing relevant contractual terms, after which you can look to select and staff a high revenue project in BC. Then you can look to announce the employee support initiatives and prepare accessible resources, after which you can begin to perform due diligence on the proposed acquisition. Over the next year, our strategy of designing a new way forward will be able to reach full scale. First, with a recommendation of how to respond, Architectonics should look to facilitate the meeting in Manila while driving internal change to support employees, which will be completed by month 3. With a recommendation of where to play, the first step will be conducting market research on potential clients in the US, which will be completed in parallel with our first recommendation. Our How to Enter strategy will begin by negotiating the acquisition, performing due diligence, and closing the purchase, which will take place from month 2 to month 11. Training of the acquired employees and the change management plan will take place beginning in month 9. These recommendations will realize KPIs of 9 to 12% return on equity by 2025, alongside a post-acquisition attrition rate below 10%. With our strategy, we have identified several risks that must be mitigated, including challenges with potential government intervention of acquisition, along with an inability to close the purchase. This can be mitigated through legal due diligence and collaborating with external advisors while being prepared to acquire identified alternative companies. Further, in-person work, including site visits, always carry the risk of COVID-19 transmissions, which must be mitigated through a preparation for remote work and implementing force majeure clauses in customer contracts to limit liability during disruptions.
Moving on to the financials, the Designing a New Way Forward strategy aims to generate industry-leading revenue growth of approximately 10 to 12%, with expected profitability as soon as year 1 due to the acquisition of JHP. When looking at the combined entity as a whole, we note that by 2026, not only is this company expected to grow at a 10% CAGR, which is approximately 4% higher than the pre-acquisition forecast, the company will also realize significant revenue diversification away from Canada. Moving on, financially, we cannot understate the attractiveness of this acquisition opportunity to Architectonics. In particular, the ability to realize ROE in excess of the firm's cost of capital, nearly double the value on the investment in JHP, and realize a conservatively forecasted baseline NPV of approximately 4.9 million is much more than the board of Architectonics has previously expected. A key input not shown in the slide is our valuation of JHP. We have conducted our valuation based on the comparable analysis summary on large public companies with similar operating models that also operate in architecture and engineering services. The analysis of companies such as Stantec and AECOM indicated these firms maintain enterprise values around 6.3 times their EBITDA on an LTM basis. When applying to private companies, we have applied around a 30% discount to arrive at a multiple of around 12 times that is the input into our NPV calculations. In summary, the Designing a New Way Forward strategy aims to take Architectonics International on time by pivoting to focus on the more culturally aligned, higher growth US market, where architectonics can truly make the most of the human advantage. Impacts of this include aligning the company with core values, significant revenue diversification, as well as attractive returns above and beyond what the board has previously considered. Now with that, we would like to take on any questions you may have, bearing in mind we're able to walk through the M&A valuation, financials, or due diligence, and M&A teams in depth in the appendix.
Bridget, go ahead.
Hi, did you do any kind of analysis of the market in terms of whether there's room for more players in the US or if that market's already saturated from an architectural firm standpoint?
Absolutely. So in our analysis, it has indicated that about 1/5 to 1/3 of architectural firms in the US are anticipating an acquisition by an international player within the next 2 years. And we believe this is due to significant demand in the backlog of projects, which must require financing from external partners.
Roderick?
I like the idea of purchasing another firm in the United States. I agree with you that that's a way faster way to get into the market, and we're going to mitigate a lot of cultural issues when operating there as well if we do that. I'm just wondering, like I have no worry about our ability to financially acquire a good company, but I'm wondering about the internal culture when we're doing this merger. How do we go about keeping our foundation of inclusivity and local expression, community impact, and staying green and everything? How do we make sure that that stays at the forefront of the company when we're bringing in other people?
Absolutely. So that's brought through our change management plan. A lot of that is communicated, not just from senior leadership in architectonics, but also making sure that the company that we're acquiring as well, JHP, is also being able to incorporate what their beliefs are, just to ensure that not only are we getting our values across, but they're actually wanting to adapt because we're having that joint discussion.
Yes, Bridget, go ahead.
You talked about the US being very similar to Canada, but I think as their neighbors to the north, we see growing differences within the US from a cultural perspective, and Texas has been in the news for a lot of various reasons in the last couple of years in terms of diversity and inclusion. How did you factor that into your analysis?
For sure. We factored in multitude of looking at culture throughout the United States. And one of the key things that we've come to understand is that Texas, although has been in the news for some of the wrong reasons, actually has been growing significantly in its multicultural diversity, as well as a hub for new people moving across the US, and is one of the most attractive regions to move to, as evidenced, especially in new housing starts and major US companies moving to Texas. So we actually believe that we're moving to an area that's actually really supportive of the multicultural aspect that our company likes to operate with.
Brian?
So you've indicated that you want to build in force majeure clauses into your contracts. It looks to me like that's in the US. Looking at what you presented, appears that it's to shield the company from any type of COVID outbreak at the company. Have you done some like research into that to determine how the legality and how enforceable that would be for like an internal, if we had an internal outbreak of COVID, if that would actually be covered by a force majeure clause?
Absolutely. So recent developments in the global legal environment, particularly with contracts regarding COVID-19, has indicated that companies must make explicit what disruptions entailed are by the force majeure. So these can be explicitly stated by saying that delays in production or delivery of the architectonic services are delayed because of office closures. As long as the wording is explicit, it will be upheld by courts in both the US and Canada.
Do you think that our clients would actually sign that if we put in a clause that said, if our architectural firm has an outbreak, that's considered a force majeure? Do you think they would sign that?
Absolutely. I think the key part about the force majeure clause is that it ensures mutual benefit as well. If the force majeure is designed so in a way that covers disruptions on the client's basis, including construction companies, it will be extremely mutually beneficial and attractive for both companies.
Okay, so that is all the time that we have for questions today. Thank you so much, delegates and judges. Delegates, you are free to leave the call now.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, everyone. It was an absolute privilege presenting to you all today.
Thank you so much. We very much appreciate it, and we're happy to be here, even if it's virtually.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.